Dara Khosrowshahi, of course, is the CEO of Uber, and he joins me here. Bernie was just saying you're one of the reasons he was able to sell that car and get no longer pay for parking. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Bernie's our favorite kind of customer,
Yes.
so thank you.
So you're in the news. I mean, let's start there.
Yes.
You're in the news today because there's a report that earlier in the year, Warren Buffett approached you about an investment. Bloomberg says $3 billion. And then Warren did comment later on to us, to our Becky Quick, saying, I'm a great admirer of Dara. Some of the reported details are not correct, but it's true Berkshire had discussions with Uber. What were those discussions?
I don't want to get into the particulars necessary of those discussions, but like Warren said, we did have discussions, and I don't think the reporting was entirely accurate. Listen, Warren Buffett is an investor who has the ability to have his choice of investment in the universe, right? It's his brand, his smarts are unparalleled. And what I'll tell you is that I'm a giant fan. I'm like a Warren Buffett fanboy for many, many years. And one of my business goals in life has been to get Warren Buffett to invest in something that I'm involved in. And so far, I've failed. So maybe one day I can convince him that, Tom's will be right. He would be willing to honor us with an investment. It hasn't happened. And, I think Warren can invest anywhere, anytime.
But no additional color on what he was looking for, what you might have been looking for, or even whether or not it's possible talks resume or continue?
I think, listen, it's always possible that talks resume, and I think there has to be a match. We are a company that has, as you know, an enormous growth trajectory, but at the same time, it comes with considerable risk. So I don't think that we necessarily fit in with the typical Warren Buffett investment. Maybe we can be a different kind of an investment, a portfolio diversification play for him. But, you never know what can happen, and I certainly would welcome any kind of a dialogue with him. It would be an honor. We didn't get there. Could we get there at some point? Maybe, maybe not.
The reports frame it as Uber's cash position is good. You got new term loans coming online, got the investment from the SoftBank consortium, but you don't really you're not hungry for liquidity at the moment.
Not at this point. I mean, we are in a good position in terms of the company's profile, in terms of profitability. Margins continue to get better. We have a very strong balance sheet. And I do think that we are on track in 2019 for an IPO. Lots of things can happen in the world, but we have a reasonable buffer as well. So I think we're in a pretty good spot. That said, we would welcome strategic investment. It's just not something, it's not first priority for me right now. First priority is to continue to build a management team, continue to invest in the brand, and get us in a position where we can build a big business and along the way go public.
What do the conditions need to be for an IPO to happen next year? Is there certain boxes need to be checked?
I think the management team has to be filled out. I am looking for a CFO, and that's a pretty important person as part of an IPO. We are very much now rebuilding the brand and what Uber represents, and I think we're making terrific progress there. As far as people understanding that we are a company that is going to be defining urban mobility going forward. And really what we're working on now is to build out the safest mobility platform on earth. And you've seen some of the moves that we made on the safety front in terms of driver screening and making sure that anyone who drives on the platform, they're checked out, they're safe, et cetera. But also making sure that when you're on the trip, you can share your trip with friends and loved ones. We introduced the 911 button if anything, God forbid, goes wrong. So really now we're working on the product, improving the product. As we improve the product, I think the financials will improve as well. And I do see us on track for a 2019 IPO at this point. And it's really about execution.
Interesting. If market conditions were to continue as they are right now, you'd feel comfortable saying 19?
At this point, yes.
Interesting.
I think we're nicely on track.
Or is it more about eats or autonomy or areas that are, growing faster but not as big?
I think that with a company of our scale, You can never take your eye off the core, and so we have to drive that core business, the ride-sharing business. And now the markets that we're in, the core markets, the U.S., Europe, Latin America, India, Middle East, Africa, et cetera. So you really have to keep your eye on the core. But when you're involved in the transportation marketplace, this is a $6 trillion market. It is such an enormous market to go after that you have to keep your eye on the core, but you also have to be making investments, forward investments. Eats for us is a big forward investment. It's growing incredibly quickly, gaining very significant share in the food delivery space. We got into Jump, which is e-bikes. We are now investing in what we call Uber as a platform, which is we're not necessarily just about taking a car from point A to B. We want to be there anytime you're going from point A to B. We want to be there for you, whether it's taking a car, whether it's taking a pooled car, whether it's taking a bike, whether you should walk, or even now, we want to build out the capability for you to take a bus or a subway. We want to be the A to B platform for transportation and the biggest one on earth.
Where's the limit to that line of thinking? I mean, would corporate logistics and like commercial delivery be out of bounds?
Certainly not. Well, we're in the freight business, and the freight industry. It's almost $1 billion freight brokerage business in the U.S. Alone, and this is a business that has classically been incredibly offline. If you wanted to ship goods from point A to B, you would call a freight broker. The broker would call a bunch of trucks out there. Automation hasn't come to the freight brokerage business. And what we do at Uber is we match supply and demand in an incredibly automated, efficient way. And we think, for example, the freight brokerage business and Uberizing the freight brokerage business is incredibly interesting. We'll do it for lower margins, and the dollars will go into the pockets of the shippers and or the truckers, and we will make some money as well. And if you take that forward into the age of automation, where trucks are driven autonomously, at least on the highway, you get to a pretty interesting business in the B2B space as well. So again, that's another bet that we're making, but the early results are actually pretty encouraging for us.
Do you think that kind of innovation is going to show itself first in the U.S., or is China more ripe for at least the autonomous part of all of that?
Well, I think that the U.S. and China are going to play a part, and I think it's going to be a race.
You do?
You know, everything that you're seeing in the technology space right now, I think the innovation that you see in China is extraordinary. And the innovation that you see in the U.S. continues to be incredibly rich, entrepreneurial, et cetera. And I do think it's going to be a race. It partially is going to have to do with the amount of innovation and the core pure tech out there. But it also has to do with governments and governments allowing this kind of innovation and experimentation to happen. So I think it's too early to call right now, but it's going to be fun to watch. And we're certainly going to play our part in the autonomous space as well.
Well, you're leading right to the big conversation here at the conference, which is the balance between regulation and innovation, and
Yes.
whether or not governments that lean more heavy on one end give up something in exchange for the other. I mean, we've seen examples.
Yes.
We've dealt with this, right? The UK, eyes remain on the UK. So
Yes.
how much of that do you think governments recognize, and are they in some cases self-defeating or destructive?
Well, listen, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I think that government regulation is going to increasingly have to play a part in the technology space. Because we're becoming a bigger and bigger part of people's lives. Because we're becoming a part of everyday life. And for example, where we play in the transportation space, this is fundamental to how people are going to move. And I think it's important for the cities and the governments that we operate in to have a voice in that. And we are changing how we work with governments. We want to be a partner with them. And for example, we have a program where we are sharing data with the cities in which we operate in as it relates to traffic flows, because the demographics are unmistakable. 50% of the world's population lives in large urban centers now. That's going to move to 2/3 in 30 years from now. More people are moving to urban centers. Infrastructure is not going to be able to keep up. So first thing you have to do is you have to be smarter about movement around the city's traffic, around the cities, et cetera. Second is you have to get single people out of cars. And this is where car sharing becomes, ride sharing becomes very important, but it also becomes where pooling, getting multiple people into a vehicle becomes incredibly important. And we're investing hundreds of millions of dollars in essentially cutting prices in order for more and more consumers to share rides, because it's not something that, socially yet is acceptable. And now we're innovating into new ways of getting around, which are e-bikes, for example, with a jump deal. And we hope to bring e-bikes all over the world so that if you're going to be a single traveler, at least take a bike. And these e-bikes, they make you feel like Superman. I mean, it's amazing how fast you go, how easy it is. And further on, we do want to help these cities in terms of their bus service, or bringing demand to their bus service, or bringing demand to their metro. So it's a whole host of efforts that we're making. And then the real kind of forward push for us is actually taking it to the air, which is if you have cities going three-dimensional, high rises for residential, high rises for business, you're going to have to add another dimension to transportation. Elon Musk wants to go underground. We're going to hopefully make overground work, and we'll see which one works.
We've seen some of the videos and the prototypes, and
yes.
People look at it now and it seems fantastical. Do you forgive them for that? Do you forgive them for saying this in a couple of years?
The amazing thing about technology is that what seems to be fantastical becomes normal and then becomes rudimentary. I mean, listen, the idea that you would push a button and have a car show up in 4 minutes 7 years ago, you say, that's amazing. Now, if the car doesn't show up in 4 minutes and shows up in 5 minutes, you're like, oh, it's a minute late, I can't believe that. Right? So it's amazing how the fantastical becomes normal, but these are big bets that you have to make. They're experimental. I'm not saying that any of this is going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult. We have to approach it through partnership. We're not trying to do it ourselves as it relates to Uber Elevate. We're bringing a number of partners that are investing in this technology, but we think a combination of battery technology, combination of compute, et cetera, make this possible, and we want to play a part in really solving this issue of urban mobility, not just next year, but 3, 5, 10 years from now.
Dara, thanks for the time.
Happy to do it.
Look
Thank you
forward
for
to
having
seeing your presentation tonight on stage.
Appreciate it.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.